Yeah, it's pretty miserable out right now, so it's kind of fitting that we had these albums to listen to this week. You know,
I don't think they're that miserable.
I mean, okay, like not that miserable. I would say like they feel like rainy day albums in a lot of cases.
I could have made you guys listen to From the Basement on the Hill, but I chose Happiness instead.
That's like the one Elliot Smith album I think I've listened to before today. So
that Elliot Smith album makes me feel ill physically.
That was the posthumous one, right?
Yeah, it went against his dying wishes.
Okay, that's fair. Speaking of dying wishes, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. If you're listening to this, it is Thanksgiving. It is Thursday. How's everybody doing today?
I'm doing good.
Cool.
I just need to shout out really quick that I found a new album this week that just came out by Jane. That is Jane, period. Called What a Wonderful Time to Be Barely Alive. And I have been enjoying it. I just wanted to shout that out.
That's a title and a sentiment I can roll with.
Yep.
So welcome to Albumology episode 3. Class is now in session. You've come here with the listening. We bring the science. And so join me. We have our esteemed special guests at our Thanksgiving feast, our bounty today. Starting with Otis.
Hello.
How's it going, Otis?
I'm doing okay. I'm excited for these albums. I had a good time listening to someone's in particular.
Good. How is the if you were a Thanksgiving food, what dish are you on the table right now?
I'm like a little breadcrumb that's like fallen off one of the plates and is about to get swept off the table.
Okay, so little breadcrumb. We then go on to Bridger. Bridger, introduce what food are you at this wonderful table we have?
I'm feeling like a really soft piece of butter.
And we still got our breadcrumb and we got our butter. We're almost complete with the Thanksgiving dinner. Special guest, Elizabeth from the Follow Upcast.
Hi.
What are you at this dinner table?
Feeling very cranberry sauce, like one of the canned ones that comes out in one piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like pre-molded already. And I'm Mr. Casady, and I am feeling, I don't know, I don't eat turkey, but I guess I'm feeling turkey.
Good to hear you're not a cannibal, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not gonna eat my own kind. But yeah, welcome to Albumology. We got only one new release this week because we got 3 curations. We're gonna start with the downbeat. New release is Adele's 30. First album since 5 years ago in 2016. And yeah, this is the apologies, I don't have my computer on me today. Is this the 4th or 5th album from Adele? So we have that information handy.
I think she started with 19. Then
yes.
She did 21.
Yes,
she did
25. So this is 4th.
So this is
okay. I think this is the 4th one. This is Adele's latest album. Singer-songwriter Adele. Obviously continues kind of the soul and R&B kind of influence of a lot of her older records with that pop twinge that has launched her into the stratosphere of stardom. But let's kind of start off talking about Adele's 30. So who wants to kick us off with Adele?
I will. I actually really enjoyed this. I have listened to her last 2 albums, I think, pretty not intensively, but I've heard them more than a lot of the other new releases that we've talked about, the artist. So I kind of knew what to expect going into it, but there were some really good parts in this album. The soul was really strong in this, and I really like how she did like the second half of the album. I really liked. Songs 4 through 6 were kind of like they were kind of her trying to like make more of a pop song, I feel like, and it just didn't really work for me as much as the other ones. But I think it was a really solid album overall.
Yeah, I shared the thoughts on, like, there are those, I think you're talking about the one specifically that had the instrumentation that sounds very like electronic, like modern pop, right? Like that's very, I agreed. Like the back half of the album is a lot of like 6-minute song after 6-minute song. And I think in the scope of those, it lends itself really well to just the production choices on this being like very kind of scaled back when they need to be. In particular, I believe it is the run of Hold On to Be Loved. Hold On kind of swells to this very grandiose moment at the end of it. A lot of instrumentation. I don't want to say old-fashioned, but certainly feels very like big in its production in a way that some of those ABBA tracks on Voyage sounded. But then when it goes to Be Loved, and if I'm not mistaken, that's the track that is very stripped down. It is just piano and vocals.
Yeah, for like 7 minutes.
For like 7 minutes. So it's like this, it's kind of like the two spectrums of Adele that we get in those two songs. So yeah, I agree that the back half of this record has some really touching moments in it, but yeah.
I was a fan of the like diversity in sounds across this album. I thought, I mean, it all kind of maintained a consistent tone.
Yeah.
But there was definitely some more of the like classic Adele vibes, with just kind of the piano and vocals, and like more simple production. That's what I like recognize Adele for. But then there were also some really fun like almost lo-fi type stuff that was happening in the background, which I really thought that was like cool to kind of have that like mixing of some more stuff that's reminiscent of what I know she's done in the past. I have not like listened to a ton of Adele, but like and then mixed in with some other like stuff that I was not really expecting.
I thought the production was really strong. Like, I think that was like the one thing that stood out to me most about the album was like the variety in like production, especially I think Strangers by Nature was like a really strong start because it was more heavily produced than I was used to hearing from Adele. And I thought it was cool that she like had a very specific like instruction that she wanted her album to be listened like in its correct order, and Spotify like actually obliged and removed the shuffle option so that if you want to listen to her album, you're either going to listen to like one individual song or it in the correct order.
Yeah, I was impressed. The last 3 songs in particular are like my kind of soul, I guess. There's like that specific type of soul that I really like with that. I don't know, it's like a very present bass and just kind of like goes on for a long time, but it doesn't feel too long and it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel too slow. It just kind of is, you know? And I really enjoyed that, and I was impressed to hear that on a modern pop album.
Yeah, I did not expect, and I haven't, forgive me, I haven't listened to a full Adele record. Obviously, I've heard the singles off of 21 and 25, because I feel like you couldn't avoid, there was a period of time where you could not avoid like Hello and Rolling in the Deep.
Yeah.
And like Set Fire to the Rain. Like those are the 3 that stand out in my mind as Adele. I didn't go into this expecting a skit. And in the song, I want to highlight the 3rd track, My Little Love, which is this, I think, incredibly successful kind of like To My Child songs. We've seen a couple of these already this year. Most notably, we saw one from James Arthur called Emily. But this is a case where it's Adele struggling to communicate the complexity of her emotion and how she's feeling and what she's going through to her child. But there's it looks like the feature on here is Angelo Adkins doing the kind of skit part of this. But they have these kind of exchanges of dialogue where, you have Angelo Adkins kind of playing Adele's child saying like, I feel like you don't love me. And Adele saying like, why do you feel like that? It's like, well, do you like me? And Adele says, Mommy doesn't like anyone else like I like you, right? And that goes straight into the chorus of I'm holding on barely. Mama's got a lot to learn. It's heavy. I'm holding on. Catch me. Mama's got a lot to learn. Teach me. Which I think is a cool inversion of kind of this like this admission of I'm doing my best and I need to learn and grow still. And kind of like being a mother is part of that journey. And that song in particular is like hit pretty heavy, and like I didn't expect to hear a skit it featured in an Adele track, and it happened, and it lends itself really well to these serious topics and stressors that motherhood would bring. So
yeah, and going into that song, I was not really a fan of it. I was
Really?
listening. I was like, okay, it's like, voice memo of a kid, like, and it's like those. They don't really feel like that great to me usually, but as it went into like the second half, it just kind of got better and better to me, and it all came together, and I was surprised by that, because I started out writing it, I was like, okay, it's like it feels like a private conversation. I don't really know if I want to hear that, and it just kind of was weird.
Yeah.
But then it was like, okay, I can get on board with this as it went into the second half.
Yeah.
Honestly, I understand that it's like emotional and vulnerable, and like I understand how some people would really love it, but it was like honestly my least favorite track on the album. I don't know what it is, but it really drives me up the wall when an artist will put an audio recording of a conversation or of like them talking into a song. I don't want to, like, I don't know what it is. It's like such a pet peeve. I think it's because it was so popular like 2 years ago. You couldn't listen to a single like lo-fi produced song without hearing someone being like, hey, I just want to see if you got my message. Like, I can't stand hearing people talk in songs in like a little like lo-fi recording. I just can't get past it. That was one thing that like stopped me from liking the song.
I've been listening to a lot of albums this year that have skits in them, so I'm just, I guess, numb to that feeling. Like, I listened to Limp Bizkit album a lot, and there's this entire skit in there. It's like a voicemail from a fan, and I'm like, oh. So, yeah, to each their own. Like, I thought it added enough, but I do like the outro on that song, though. Like, I think it ends with, my notes are on a Google Doc that's not in front of me right now, but it ends on this line where it says, like, kind of like this emotion dump, where it ends up, I just want to watch TV and curl up in a ball and be in my sweats and stuff like that, but I just feel really lonely. I feel a bit frightened that I might feel like this a lot. And it's like that fear of just, I'm not afraid of feeling like this. I'm afraid of this feeling repeating itself. And that's why that track in particular stood out to me, is I think it sold me on that. Even if the skit caught me off guard, I thought I liked that little interlude within the song personally. But
yeah, no, I really appreciated this skit. I thought like it was, I don't know, it drew me into it. And I think like I can see where you're coming from with some of those, with some skits being like not good. But I think like it used tastefully, they can bring out a lot in a song.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I went into it for the first part. I was like, it doesn't really feel like necessary at the beginning, but it kind of it picked up for me as the song went on.
Any other? So I know we're talking a lot about we talked a lot about obviously the third track, and we've mentioned kind of the back half. Are there any other standout tracks that anyone wants to highlight that they feel either really did something for you or just kind of missed, or just anything that lyrically maybe hit in particularly hard on this record for you?
Hold On hit really hard.
Yeah.
I feel like To Be Loved, which is in the next track, I liked that one a lot also, but it didn't really grow as much as Hold On did, because Hold On just kind of like started out with that kind of I don't really know how to explain it, but it's like it's not a very long verse to start out with, and then the second verse has like backing vocals that sing the first verse over it, and I thought that was pretty cool. And the lyrics on that were really hard.
Yeah, there's that one lyric on there, like, right now I truly hate being me. And just throughout that song. And that song was cool too, because I feel like it had like this, it was like stripped down for so much of it, and I was expecting it to be like that for the whole song, but then like half the way through, or maybe even more, it had like this build up to something different, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. It was different.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I found like I had a hard time connecting to the lyrics, I think because it is so like the subject of the album, like trying to explain divorce to your child isn't something I think I could relate to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think she was interesting. In an interview I watched, she said that like she specifically didn't want to write something for teens or young adults. The music industry, like she had a lot of like managers and stuff saying like, oh, don't you want to write something for TikTok? You've got to write something for TikTok. And she was like, everything is for teenagers. Can I just write something for like 30 to 40-year-old women to understand? Like grown women going to therapy. Like, so I don't think I'm like the target demographic, obviously. And I think she did a great job of like having a target audience and then making like a clear narrative throughout the album. Yeah, I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, there's certainly like as you mentioned, there's a maturity to the album that I think a lot of pop artists by nature kind of miss, because like if you're going for popularity, you're trying to target the middle ground. So like if you go too far in one direction, you're going to skew out of that popularity zone, that pop music zone. So it's interesting to hear that she deliberately like wrote to a specific demographic, which when you do pop music you don't, generally speaking. But because you think of it, like there's not a single song on here that I think it's oh my god, yeah, I think like Cry Your Heart Out and like Oh My God do part of this, but like there's no like riotous like bluesy rock song like a Rolling in the Deep, for example, which is a song that like, so yeah, she has the potential to write a TikTok song, is what I'm trying to say. She's demonstrated this in the past, but I'm trying to imagine any one of these tracks like showing up on TikTok, and I'm like, I drink wine showing up on TikTok would be like very bizarre and strange. Yeah, and so I respect hearing that. I respect kind of the artistic integrity and like, oh, I'm going to communicate feelings that I have that people will relate to. Will it be accessible to everyone necessarily? Not always, like, because music doesn't have to be accessible to everyone all the time.
I thought she was so like vulnerable in a lot of her interviews. I thought that was like really cool to see, because she's a major celebrity, you know?
Yeah.
Like when she does an interview, she knows that like millions of people are going to hear it. But she like in one interview, she actually said that like a lot of this album, it's different than her other music, because a lot of the times it was like singing about how like her ex-lovers did her wrong, like putting a lot of blame on them. And she said that she came to this big epiphany like before writing this album, that she was like a part of the problem in a lot of her relationships, and especially in this one. So she came out like this album with a whole new approach of taking ownership for a lot of things, which I think was like cool, and you don't see that very often. Like a lot of times, like when you write like a breakup album, it's very like you're the victim, you know what I mean?
It's very one-sided.
For her to like take away, like I don't even think she wrote a song exactly like trashing on her ex-husband, you know what I mean, on this album. So I thought that was like cool. And I also liked like how reggae inspired some of the things were. I haven't listened to like a lot of reggae, and I think like I don't know, I just thought it was cool and it was different than her normal sound. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of reggae influence in the gospel as well, which I know she's demonstrated some gospel in the past, but like this is like a soul album through and through. Like in the past, it's been like these soul pop hybrids, but there's like so many of these like cool elements that just, this is a song where like we have two other singer-songwriters we're talking about today, like solo acts more or less. And it's really interesting how they all approach songwriting differently. And one of the things I noted was Adele anchors the song around the lyrics and her vocal performance, and then everything kind of adds to that. And so it's really interesting to see so much thought put first and foremost into the lyrical content of the album, then delivered through a vocal performance to resonate with a certain feel, and then just hearing every little pocket of the instrumentation build onto that and flesh out that sound, I think is like wildly successful on this record. It feels so cohesive and good.
I was really impressed at how she like branched out in her sound and in her songwriting, but still kept so many of like the classic Adele vocals and feelings. And it just like, it brought all of the good like up a few more levels.
Also, Casady, you mentioned earlier that you really, it might have been you, Otis. One of you mentioned that you really liked Cry Your Heart Out.
I don't know if I cry. So Cry Your Heart Out, I wasn't like, I think it, because like there was, it's that middle part where I'm iffier on the songs.
Because I don't know, Cry Your Heart Out for me was like, I only really like disliked My Little Love and Cry Your Heart Out just because I don't know if it was like an intentional choice to have like these like affirmations or like mantras repeated, but it was just, I think repetition can be used like poignantly in songs, and for me, I have a low tolerance for repetition, so I just wasn't a big fan of that song.
Yeah, I think those are the tracks those are the ones that have the more like modern pop productions on them that I wasn't a huge fan of. It's weird because those stray closer to I'm just gonna like cross-reference like Florence and the Machine. I think those they don't have the exact same sound, obviously. Like Florence Welch is vastly different from in songwriting approach to Adele, but I think this album was less successful when it was trying to approach just being grand or just being modern and trying to instrumentally at least go in the pop direction. And so yeah, like that's why I really like those the back 3 or 4 tracks specifically, because they take their time to unfold themselves in a way that like they're twice the length of what a pop single would be. Like they just belabor the point, and in doing so they don't feel boring. They don't feel to me that they are overindulgent. They just feel like, oh, this is a song that is just happening, and it's like unfolding itself before our eyes, and then 6.5 minutes go by, next track, and it does the exact same thing. They feel like little paintings put together. They're purposeful. And so yeah, like the middle of the album, I was citing like specifically, I can't, my notes are on my computer for that.
I'm
one.
Sorry if I just misheard.
No, it's all good. No, I understand. But no, like it's that middle of the album where I think it sags just a bit, because I, as somebody who does like tracks 1 through 3 for the most part, it's those middle parts where it isn't quite at the point where it's doing those massive like sprawling tunes, right? It's kind of this like in the this feels the closest to what I imagine filler on this album would be. Yeah, is like aesthetically the middle of the album. So.
I thought that it was interesting on Oh My God, the vocal production like really was reminiscent of Dance Monkey by Tones and I, and that threw me off. I was so confused.
Oh my God.
I could not get through that track without thinking of Dance Monkey, and it was like, what is happening? Anyways, I think I didn't mind Cry Your Heart Out, but the more I think about it, the Oh My God was not my favorite track.
I would say like overall, I think it's a very like, it accomplished what it set out to do. Yeah. Some of it's not like entirely my cup of tea. It's like not music I listen to personally, but like I totally respect it. And one thing that I know we've already talked about production like 100 times, but I thought it was so cool. And then I like started to research for production a little bit. And one of the producers for, I can't remember which song, but he also worked with like Childish Gambino on like a lot of his work. And I thought that was really cool to like have like different producers from different genres come and like bring their own like take on it.
But most importantly, never letting the producer's sound overtake Adele's artistry.
Yeah.
Which is the fear you run into in a lot of these is like, oh cool, we're gonna bring in these 5 producers, and now those 5 producers have made a track that sounds a lot like they produced this track, and the artist kind of just sat back and said okay.
Yeah, it very much felt like her.
For sure.
And it felt like she was in control of the whole thing.
Cool. Let's give some final thoughts so we can move forward into kind of our recommendations here. So going around, I'll start it off. So I don't believe in assigning decimal points, what have you. You can assign as many decimal points as you want, but I'm going to stand by this whole numbers. I think this is highly successful in what I feel Adele was trying to communicate to an audience. It's a lot of like layered emotionality to it. That as Elizabeth, you mentioned, it feels mature, and it feels like it's not doing so in a pandering way or even trying to make it as like universal as possible. It feels like very specific, real emotions, which gives it a lot of weight. While I do have my problems kind of with the middle of the track, I think the opening like 3 cuts followed by just the way the album ends with like these large, like huge songs that feel very emotional and very personal, and feel like events, make this an incredibly successful soul pop crossover album, to the degree where in my mind, I'm like teetering on a 7 or an 8 out of 10, probably an 8, leaning closer to a 7. I think, some of the stuff that happens in the middle just doesn't pan out for me personally. But thematically, this made me empathize certainly with the emotions that she's getting trying to communicate and get across. And yeah, like starting with like All Night Parking and Woman Like Me, and then on, it is just banger after banger, and like really a showcase for somebody who's an established and talented songwriter. And I think this is a great vehicle for that. So probably an 8 out of 10, closer to a 7 than a 9. So
I would give it like between an 8 and a 9, just because I was so happy with the different ways that it went, while still maintaining like a steady theme and kind of some steady components, but that also didn't get repetitive or boring or like anything like that. And just, I mean, obviously it's an Adele album, so a strong point is going to be her vocals, because she's an amazing singer, like incredible. And some of the like harmonies on this album just had me like in awe, and like her vocal performance was so incredible. So I think like those 2 middle tracks do bring it down a bit for me, but other than that, I think it's like a super solid album. So yeah, like a 8.5, or an 8 or a 9, so somewhere in there.
I like that she made strong choices when she went into making it. It's not for me, and I respect that, and I think that's part of why it's like not my cup of tea, but I think she executed it really well. So I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
I gave this one an 8 out of 10, also leaning closer to a 7, but I just like, it felt honest, and it was really emotional, and really the only songs that brought it down for me were Cry Your Heart Out, Oh My God, and Can I Get It? 4, 5, and 6. Everything else was strong, and like the songs that I didn't like were some of the shortest on the album, so that helps when like all the other songs are twice as long as them. But it felt real, and it felt good, and like some of the last few songs are like things that I would actually listen to on my own.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that is Adele's 30, and with that, we will move into our curations for this week. So last week, I believe we're beginning with Bridger.
Yes.
Bridger, you recommended to us Perennial, an album from Vern Matz. So go ahead and introduce the album, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, so Perennial is the second album by the band Vern Matz, following Minnesota Dancing, which was their debut. It was released on July 16th of this year on Nice Guys Records, and has a total runtime of 28 minutes and 34 seconds. It's kind of a folk adjacent album, but it has like really strong indie and kind of like softer rock influences on some tracks. And so I guess it would be like an indie folk rock album. I'm going to wait to give my thoughts on this one until everybody else goes, because I want to hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will pass this off to whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'm gonna go because a mysterious person just pointed at me. Anyways,
Cut that out.
anyways, I thought this album was really it was really good. I did not really know what to expect coming into this, but like, just in kind of first looking the album up, I was impressed by the album cover, and that like piqued my interest, and so I was like, I'm excited about this. And yeah, it was really fun to listen to, and there was like a lot of different stuff that was going on, and the way yeah, like the vocals were also really nice. I liked the song Galaxy Feelings and Fish Tank a lot. They were really fun. And I think just like, yeah, it's fun.
I was a fan of like the lo-fi production. I really liked the guitar in it. Like I liked all the guitar riffs and stuff. When I was like trying to read about this album, it was the first time I ever heard the word slowcore. Like I didn't know that was an adjective until looking at this album. I want to say more about it, but I'm like someone that can't hear what like an artist is saying unless they're enunciating very clearly. I have to look up lyrics for like every song if I want to talk about it, and I couldn't find it online. Like when I tried to go looking for it, I spent like 30 minutes looking for the lyrics, and I instead just found out that they're a duo and they got together at Yale, and I was like, that's great. I can't hear what you're saying, but that's great.
Yeah, I mean this is an album that I would firmly like. Slowcore is a good way to describe it. I would firmly place this in like the same territory as, you know, like bedroom alt, I guess. Like bedroom is this weird emerging, but it's been around for like a decade. But like just bedroom adjective added onto something. So bedroom alt, bedroom indie rock, like bedroom indie folk, something like that. Where there's a clear sense of like a natural space. The lo-fi production feels very warm. I mentioned it says warm here. And there's like I don't want to say chill vibe necessarily, but it certainly feels laid back. It doesn't feel like either too aggressive or like it's trying hard or it's like it hits this kind of middle ground where it feels like, I want to describe it as like the Shins, right? Like this kind of like warm, almost like nostalgic feel to it. Which I do like, and I think this is, you said this is a duo, and I think they pull that off exceptionally well. One of the biggest downfalls I have, so I have two kind of key problems with this album. One is the lyrics range from clever to kind of schmaltzy and cringe. They can kind of seem a little like, oh, look how cute we're being, and have this kind of vibe to them where I'm like, okay, like it sounds like some of White Stripes catalog where it's just like, oh, it's gonna be this really cutesy, like this, like this the lyrics that like I can understand them at least, but like it's like, okay, well this is cool alliteration, but like there's not. It doesn't serve the song in a way that meshes with the rest of it. So like one verse might be clever, and then the other verse might be something I doesn't hit as hard. I think like Smoking Sun, for the most part, the lead track, lyrically at least, is on top of it and does pretty well. But then like Galaxy Feelings, just like the term Galaxy Feelings, even as a song title, like conjures in my mind an AJR song. I don't know why. It's just like, my feelings are like galaxy feelings, man. Like it's that kind of stuff where like it doesn't always go that direction. Similar to Otis, I think Fish Tank is a great track. I really like Fish Tank. Fish Tank is weird because I wrote that it's composed like a 90s pop rock track. The guitar in it and just like the tone of the song sounds like an Oasis track. Obviously with that big soaring like rock balladness of an Oasis song, but like you can definitely hear this late 90s influence, which I think is where a lot of that warmth also comes from. I'm curious what other people think about either the lyrics or some of the other tracks before I get into my other issue with it. But I do want to highlight real quick that Funny Water slaps. It's actually really good. I really like the song Funny Water. It's one of my favorite on the track or on the album. But I don't know, what do you guys think about, like, I know Elizabeth, your thoughts on the lyrics, but
I have no thoughts on the lyrics. I enjoyed it. Like if there was like a couple songs put on a playlist, I would probably be like, oh, this is good, like I'll like this song. But there was like no song in particular jumped out to me. Like I didn't find like, it's not bad by any means. There just wasn't a discernible uniqueness. I thought it sounds like so similar to like every alternative indie album I've like ever listened to. I thought, like, I know Bridget disagrees heavily on this, but I thought it sounded really similar to like Peach Pit or Lord Huron. I thought, I don't know, like, I don't know if it was the vocals or the production choices, but I don't know. I don't think it's bad by any means. I just, like, nothing stood out to me, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like throughout the album there was like a lot of this matching of the like instrumentation and the musicality of it to the lyrics, and like I think that was I feel like that was definitely something that was trying to be achieved, but I don't know. I think in some places it did really well. I don't like the song Fish Tank to me sounded like a fish tank, which was like, I don't know how to describe it other than that, but I think so there was definitely some of that like shined through in that album, in this album, but there were also some songs that were not as like standout, like you said. I think there was like, it was I don't know.
What about the preschool to me? Like, that's when I started.
Okay.
The preschool one is when I started, like, well, I don't, it was like, I was vibing with it until I got to the preschool one, honestly. And then I was like, this just, like, I had to, like, go listen to a Lord Huron song and a Peach Pit song, because I was like, this is...
I did write the phrase, Polar Star Preschool is the worst track on the album.
It just, that was, like... the beginning of the end for me, I guess. Like,
so Bridger, where does this fall in their discography? Which album number is this?
This is their second.
This is their second. Okay. So yeah, the kind of the other problem I have is, so a lot of this seems like emblematic of growing pains of a new artist. And they've only been around for a couple of years now. Is that correct?
Since like 2017.
2017. Yeah. So it feels like growing pains in a lot of ways, namely because there's some inconsistency on the album. Like, there's some of these more lush, nostalgic, warm produced tracks, and then there's some really stripped down stuff. And I think the stripped down tracks, Polar Star Preschool being one of them, work less successfully than the other tracks on the record. For example, Fish Tank or Funny Water, or I think Prohibition City is actually a really good way for them to end this record. And then, like, Cave of the Past, I like my interludes. I like my ambient interludes. But it just felt totally out of left field on a record that is going for that more lo-fi sound. And then, oh, by the way, here's a 49-second ambient sound, more or less. And so it felt like, okay, they have some really cool ideas. And it kind of felt like at times a mishmash of two different sounds of two different EPs. And so I'm curious, because I know it's hard to make an album and like hard to nail that like balance of cohesion without just having all the songs sound the same. And I guess that's my biggest criticism of it, is there were times where it just, some of the tracks from track to track just didn't feel cohesive, or they didn't feel like they gelled well together. It felt like, oh, some of these I could playlist really successfully. And I think like if I could reorganize this track listing and this like sequence it differently, I think it might sound better, but as is, it just felt a little wishy-washy at times.
I want to give some a little bit more background that probably explains that.
Please do.
Danny Belgrad, who is the lead person, the vocalist and guitarist of the duo, he decided to make an album between November 1st and Thanksgiving of last year. Okay. So I think that's probably why there's some like conflicting songs, and like it doesn't exactly like all go together, which is it's like the thing that it's like one of the weaknesses of the album, I think. And so I think that explains it, that there's like, it was made in like 30 days.
Okay. Yeah. It's cool. It's like that Pearl Jam record that they recorded in 4 days. It's also a mess. So that makes sense. Cool. Well, Bridger, why don't you tell us your thoughts on this a little bit, or prod us, poke us, whatever you need to do.
Okay, so this is like my favorite album of time so far. Okay. I have liked this band for like a year and a half or so, and so I was listening when they put out their first album, and that was my favorite album of all time. And then I think that this one is like at the same level or tops that one by a little bit for me.
Yeah.
And so I just figured I should put something out there for my first suggestion that represents my music taste. But I really like, my favorite songs on the album are Prohibition City. I really love that song. Yeah. It like keeps up some energy. It's I think the longest song on the album.
Yeah, it is.
And on the last chorus, you can just like, there's some distortion on his voice, and it just feels like, I don't know. Lots of the songs are just kind of heartbreakers on this, and I love them. Star Without a Sky also is just like beautiful, and I really like the spacey ambient kind of sounds on that one. And Galaxy Feelings, I think the intro to Galaxy Feelings is really cool. That just like the first 5 seconds or something, because it starts out with this kind of like synth pad sound, and then there are 3 electric guitar just like very soft plucks, and they switch from ear to ear. And there's just like something about that I don't know. This album just kind of like fits for me, and I really like the diversity of sounds on the album. It goes from like these like the bedroom rock kind of folk rock thing with like Smoking Sun and So It Goes, into like a complete folk song pretty much with Another Land, which is like a minute and a half. But it just, there's lots of diversity on the album, and I really appreciate that in a piece of in an album.
Yeah. I can see, there is a lot of diversity to it. I just wish personally that it felt a little more cohesive in its feel.
I think that Polar Star Preschool is like the one that doesn't fit the most, since it's just like a completely different sound than all of the others. Like most of the songs on the album are acoustically driven, and it just kind of like completely switches that.
Yeah. And it's especially jarring because then it's followed by a palate, like Cave of the Past is like a palate cleanser going into Prohibition City, which is far and away, one of the strongest songs on the album. So it's especially jarring in its location as like essentially the penultimate track. But
yeah. So I listen to this album about once a week, but I really just find it so beautiful, and I really enjoy it. Also, they have a new album coming out on the 20th of December, so very excited.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that this like it definitely had a vibe to it. Like, I don't know if like cohesive is necessarily the right word, but like driving down like a 2-lane road in like a small car on a like kind of sunny day, but like I don't know, I'm just trying to describe like the emotion that it evoked. But I think that throughout the album there was like, it was something that I could definitely see like having a lot of like it was an album that was easy to connect with. I don't really know where that comes from, but I think like there was like it had a vibe, which is the best way I can describe it, and I think that was like a very strong part of it.
One more thing that I want to mention about Polar Star Preschool is that I appreciate that song because I find it kind of funny, because the school that I went to in Alaska for 2nd to 5th grade was called Polaris, and also it kind of reminds me of this school. Like, the halls, they may be small and the kids all radicals at Polar Star Preschool. I just thought that was like kind of like, it's like the stereotype of what people think of Fala.
See, I didn't realize they were calling the kids radicals, because I couldn't hear what he was saying. Maybe I just need to work on my listening skills. I don't know.
Yeah, listening comprehension is a beautiful thing. All right. Yeah, Bridger, anything else, or you want us to give some final thoughts here?
I think I am ready for final thoughts.
Okay, who wants to take it away?
I can go.
Sure.
So I thought this was a really, it was a nice album. I stand by the vibe thing. I don't know what I was trying to say earlier, but it has a vibe and it works well. So that was really a strong part about it. There was also a lot of just musicianship in the album, which is definitely something that I appreciate. And it had a good closing track, and there were some tracks that I will definitely go back and listen to. But yeah, so I would give it a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I'd say. Yeah.
I think I would thoroughly enjoy some of the songs if they were put on a playlist or a soundtrack or something. Sitting down and listening to all of it at once, I think was that caused my issues with it. I think some of the songs could be really strong if they were separated from the album. You know what I mean? Mm. I think I would genuinely enjoy some of Vern Matt's music if it was just a couple of them on a playlist, but all of it together, and I just really thought it lacked a discernible quality that set it apart from other indie alternative lo-fi bands. So I give it a 6 out of 10, but I don't think it's bad by any means. I just didn't really connect with it.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of the same sentiments. I think in particular, I've mentioned it before, but I really like Fish Tank, Funny Water, and Going into Prohibition City. I think those are great tracks that I would like to revisit. As far as an album, though, it just doesn't have the flow or as Elizabeth said, that kind of indiscernible quality of what makes an album something that I want to sit through the entire way. I'm curious with this new album coming out to see if they kind of iron out one of those things to really stand out for their next record. But I kind of put it in a 6 as well. And I'm not assessing your taste of music. I know, Bridger, you said that this is kind of to get everybody a sense of your taste in music and kind of some of the things that you listen to. But also, music's super subjective. And yeah, so for me, it's also a 6. It's by no means offensive or bad. It's just, it's kind of just down the middle for me. It was just I like a good chunk of this, but there's some things that just didn't quite pan out in the way that I think they maybe had hoped, at least. So
yeah, this song is probably my 9.5 out of 10. There are definitely some songs that I don't like as much as others, but there are also some songs that I just can't imagine being any better. Okay. And I really I really love this album, and it might just be I really like it. There's a lot I really resonate with a lot of the sounds of the album, and like I've said before, I really like the softer songs on albums, and this has a good number of those, and reverb and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, 9.5 for me.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing, Bridger. We now go on to our special guests selection. So Elizabeth, you chose for us an Elliot Smith record. So why don't you go ahead and talk to us about it a bit?
Yeah, so I chose Elliot Smith's sophomore album, released in 1995. It's his self-titled album. I have no idea why he chose to make the second one his self-titled one. His debut was Roman Candle, and he was not successful at the time. He didn't really become a notable artist until one of his songs was put in Good Will Hunning's soundtrack. But before anyone has the chance to roast Elliot singing, I know it's bad. I know it's bad, but I care more about content than delivery. So that's why I'm like really drawn to Elliot Smith as an artist. I've been into his music since like, I think like around a year now. Like I think I got like actually like into it in like February of this year. And I had a hard time picking like what album to do because I think he has a lot of like really beautiful songs. I like tragic music. I like music that like makes me want to like tie bricks to my shoes and go for a swim. And I think Elliot does that. But I also don't think he's a perfect artist. The only thing that was stopping me from choosing XO is it has 2 songs that I just can't listen to. Like I think Elliot has made some of my favorite songs of all time and some of my least favorite songs I've ever heard. So this was the song that I thought was the most like consistent throughout, because there are just songs on like his other albums that I won't listen to like at all. I don't know. What were you guys' thoughts?
I really don't have like a whole lot of history with listening to Elliot Smith. There are 2 songs before this that I have listened to and liked, and like I listen to on a relatively regular basis. So I am glad that I listened to this album.
What were the songs?
Angel in the Snow is my favorite Elliot Smith song, and I think Say Yes is the other one.
A classic. Yeah.
But there were some songs that I liked on here, and there were also some songs that I didn't like as much. I wish there was like a bit more production on the album to like, I don't know, just like make it a bit more pleasant to my ears. I don't know how to like put this, but yeah, I don't know. I really liked. There were 3 songs that I really liked on here, and that was Clementine. I thought there was really good imagery in the lyrics on that one, and that was a solid song. The other ones were, I can't find it. Good to Go. I thought that the like chorus / pre-chorus on it was lacking. Like I wouldn't be a hero if I wasn't such a zero or something like that. That's just like, I don't know, that kind of put me off. But I like the guitar on that a lot, and I liked most of the other lyrics. And then also The Biggest Lie, it was like one of the more relaxed songs, I guess, and it was more like simple, but the lyrics and instrumentation worked.
Bridger, I'm gonna strongly disagree with a lot of what you said. So my experience with Elliot Smith was
You thought he was Sam Smith.
I thought he was Sam Smith. There was a confusion there. I was just like, why are you listening to the person who put out the inferior James Bond theme song that was chosen over Radiohead? And I was very confused. But no, in actuality, so I had known the Good Will Hunting song. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's probably the first memory I have of Elliot Smith.
I think it was Miss Misery.
It's entirely possible.
I think.
Yeah, because that's a good soundtrack. But and then it was listening to his posthumous release from 2004, which I thought was pretty. Like it was nothing special, and I can't even probably remember a single track off of it. This is probably like 10, 15 years ago. I might have listened to it. I was in college or in high school. It was in that weird gray area where I was just listening to whatever and been like, wow, okay, and it's consuming. So visiting this, and I know this comes from before Either Or, which I think Either Or is an album I have heard of before.
It's his most popular, yeah.
That would make sense. So I have heard of that album. My only other experience with this was knowing that Queens of the Stone Age has done a cover of actually a song on this album called Christian Brothers, citing that the band, the lead singer of the band, Josh Homme, cited it as, quote, like I think his favorite song of all time. This album is intensely personal, intensely emotional. I think if it were produced any more than it is, it would lose so many of those qualities. This is an album that sounds like a singer-songwriter writing the songs he wants to write to the degree he wants them produced. It sounds like he mixed them himself, because it does not sound like a professional mix engineer worked on this album. And I mean that in a very sincere, good way. This feels like, I don't want to say a collection of demos, because there are basic things in it. Like the most extensive that the production gets is double tracking the vocals. Like that's as extensive as it gets. I think his voice is actually really good. Like, really good. I love his voice. I think his vocal performance, you couldn't do it any other way. It wouldn't feel nearly as good. I love the fact that he mixes most of these tracks with the vocals in the center channel, double tracked. Like, so it's up here in your forehead as the instrumentation happens around it. I know we talked about Adele, and Adele kind of writes the songs around the vocal and the lyric performance. I feel like these songs are written around guitar riffs. They're very riff driven. And the riffs are awesome. Oh my God, Needle in the Hay is such a good riff. It is such a good riff. It is so good. The melody of that song, like it's repetitive, but like it's one of the longer tracks on the album too. But it works so well as an intro. Christian Brothers, I've never heard the original one of them, is a phenomenal track. Like, just the message it sends from like that first lyric, which I can't quote on air, to a bad word in it, but like this feeling of kind of like fed up and not want to be pushed around. Clementine, Bridger, you highlighted this song. It is haunting, and it is so gorgeous. It is intensely personal. Oh my God, Southern Belle is one of my favorite tracks on this album as well. Like, the hits keep coming, folks. Southern Belle has this fun, bouncy riff, and that is contrasted with this message of like all you know how to do is kill something, and you are killing something actively, and like expressing this frustration with it. Like, it goes into single file. Coming Up Roses is hang on, I gotta flip over my sticky note. Coming Up Roses is so much slower than like single file, which precedes it, but like the chorus is beautiful, and like there's this beauty in the simplicity of songwriting when you can distill songwriting to its core elements and break it down to a single vision. And this album as a whole really expresses a level of tragedy and sadness to it that feels so good to listen to. It feels so palatable and feels like so like this is like 1995 this is happening. This is like far before like Lucky Denver Mint, like two years later. This is before like White Stripes about like Distilge and kind of like change alt rock more or less for better or worse. And this just feels like a singer-songwriter putting out like taking demo work and turning it into their own album, and not a single piece of this feels wasted in any way. I don't know what else, like maybe Satellite is the weakest track, because I feel like it doesn't add too much new to the album. It's like smack dab in the middle. But then like Alphabet Town is great. There's like a twinge of hope in St. Ides Heaven that is not really present anywhere else on this record. And like it has me wanting to listen to more Elliot Smith in a way.
Stream Elliot.
But like this, I am a sucker for just really good songwriting, and I'm also a sucker for like riff driven, like deconstructed rock music. This is a gorgeous album, and it is layered not through its production, it is layered through its composition and through its delivery, and it nails those so successfully. It is probably my second favorite album I've listened to this week, and the other one is the one I recommended, so that's probably why it's not the first one. If I had not recommended the album we're listening to today, it would probably be my favorite one of the week. I unironically love this record. It's so good. I'm going to stop gushing about it now.
I really enjoyed this. I think like along some of the lines of what Mr. Casady said, like the just like the way that it sounds like it was that Elliot Smith went about writing this album is really cool. Like it's so, it doesn't have like that intimate feel that some songs have, where it's like just the piano and vocals, and you can like hear that like the piano keys actually being pressed. Like it doesn't have that level. It's like not that type of intimacy, but it's like a different type where, I mean, I don't know, I feel like I'm in, like, I don't know, like you're in a room with somebody maybe, and they can kind of like control that room more, but it's like very personal and very intimate. And like some of the vocal harmonies and like the way the guitar paralleled those vocal harmonies, like, I mean, there wasn't a lot of harmonizing on this album, but when there was, I think it was Clementine. Like I listened to like one phrase in that song over and over again. Like there were a couple of like lyrical phrases that were paralleled by the guitar, and some just guitar phrases that I went back to over and over again to listen to them because they were just like so incredible. And I think like a strong point of this album was definitely like the just the way that he like kind of took this like very simple instrumentation and then made it into something like really creative and engaging to listen to.
And I want to say, like, just one more thing to kind of highlight regarding the instrumentation. The stripped down feel lends itself well to surprises happening on the album. I want to highlight Alphabet Town's opening with that harmonica. That is a beautiful way to make space for another instrument, and it feels kind of refreshing, especially after Satellite, which is a track I was not super high on. But like Alphabet Town like creates this sense of space in a way like a Neil Young track, and I really like Neil Young, so it's part of it. But like the harmonica in the intro to that track gives this like such wonderful sense of space and feel that, I mean, it feels like it's that small bedroom feel, but like it's always there's this brooding darkness underneath it, whether it's in the lyrical content or in the delivery of it and the execution. And I'm a sucker for that stuff. And it's you never feel like you're haunted and feel like super depressed listening to this, but you feel the sense of isolation. It puts you into that space and kind of holds you there, and then releases at the end. And it's like, I need to stop saying.
I have so much today. I've been biting my tongue so violently because I just
It's your album. Go for it.
Like
You're Elliot
you were
Smith.
talking about Needle in the Hay and the riff of it. Like I didn't like really like emotionally connect to this song because I didn't like feel like Googling like the actual lyrics and then reading through it and like figuring out like what it alluded to. I was like, why does he keep repeating things like so repetitive? And then I like watched The Royal Tenenbaums by Wes Anderson, and that song is used for Richie's suicide scene, and it works so well. And then I actually looked at the meaning of Needle in the Hay, and like it really it's just like, obviously it's blatantly about heroin and his heroin abuse. But like it just, I feel like the repetition of it, like I said, I have low tolerance for repetition. It lends itself so well to a soundtrack song. And I think like it was used so well for Richie's suicide scene. It's like, I don't know. And then everyone was mentioning Clementine, which is like probably one of my favorite tracks off the album. Like it's like very folky. And like the way it talks about like alcoholism in like, it reminds me very strongly of After Hours by the Velvet Underground, which is another one of my favorite songs. Like the parallels between those two, I don't know which one was written first, but they are like very I think they're kind of like pretty similar like lyrically. And then The Biggest Lie was mentioned, which I think is the most tragic track because it's about him like talking to someone he loves before he kills himself and then telling them this horrible lie to push them away from him. And it's one of so many of Elliot Smith's songs that are just like cries for help, and it's made so much more tragic by the fact that like he did commit suicide. And I don't want to get into the controversy of like whether or not he did or not, but it just, The Biggest Lie is so upsetting to listen to.
Yeah.
And I really do urge you to go back to like From the Basement on the Hill, because it was an album that he didn't want to release because he thought it wasn't good, and they released it after he passed. But it's just, there's so much of like Elliot's discography that is just like so beautifully tragic, and like I don't know. He's not an amazing singer. That's like the biggest complaint when I try to get people to listen to it, but I'm tone deaf. Like I can hardly tell, and it's not smooth or melodic. And like he does this thing I actually really like, where he'll like sing a note until he literally loses his breath and he's like borderline wheezing at some points. And I don't know. I care more about what the artist is saying than how they deliver it.
A lot of this seems like a blueprint for like a Death Cab album. There's a lot of like Ben Gibbard's of Death Cab, like saying like a very similar vocal delivery at times, for this like exhausting yourself till the note is spent. Yeah.
And you mentioned St. Ides Heaven, which has one of my favorite lyrics ever. And it's like, the moon is a light bulb breaking. It'll go around with anyone, but it won't come down for anyone. And it's one of those times where like you can't tell if Elliot is talking about a drug or a girl, because a lot of times he'll use a girl as a metaphor for a drug, or like a drug as a metaphor for a girl. But it's just, I don't know, he has this way of making like horrible things sound like so romantic. And I don't know, I just and this album is like, it's so much of like this longing for things, because he, like, especially seen in Alphabet Town, where he's like young and alone in a foreign city, and it was written before any of his music reached any sort of success, and he had just moved to LA, and he was like so lost, and like there's so much he wants and he just can't have it. I don't know.
I want to talk a little bit more.
Okay.
I feel like his voice, like, I know we have both opinions at the table here about his voice, but I think that it's kind of like thin and airy, and I think that works really well on some of the songs, and I think it doesn't work so well on some of the other songs. But I think, like, I don't have an issue with his voice particularly.
It's not what you said earlier.
For our audio listeners, that was a moment where Elizabeth had Bridger around the collar, actually. About to do like a suplex. I don't know what that was, but let's just calm down, you two. And then, Bridger, I'm sorry about that scuffle. Please.
No, it's like I can really enjoy his voice in like some scenarios, and in some it doesn't feel as special, I guess. I did like in Coming Up Roses, I thought it was pretty cool when there was like a second vocal track that was just in the right ear, and then right after that there was like an electric guitar riff hook kind of thing that was also in the right ear, and it just kind of like added some cool like texture to the song. I didn't like, I don't know, I think I'm just kind of like a little bit disappointed, because I really wanted it felt like it was just like it was reaching, and like it was so close to being really good and like something that I really like, but it just was like slipped out of my fingers for some reason, and I'm not sure why, but it just kind of like there's this kind of inexplainable quality that just didn't really work for me for some reason.
I would like to reiterate if the voice were any different on any of these tracks, it would all fall apart. I think every piece of the songwriting is so integral to what the album's sound is, and I just really appreciate the committing to a sound, the committing to an album and an idea. And again, like I love how this has that amateur tinge. I know he's a professional songwriter. I understand this is the second work. I know he was in a Footnote. Well, the other thing I know is he was in a Footnote grunge band called Heat Miser, which is fine. It's okay, but like it's like post 90s grunge boom after the underground scene had blown up. So it's like that's not great, but like it has this quality to it where it's like, yeah, somebody recorded this themselves and mixed it themselves and engineered it themselves, and every decision feels purposeful, and like I respect that a lot, especially when I think it is executed exceptionally well, personally.
I like the production was really simple, but I think there were some like choices that made it just like really worked. I feel like in a lot of songs, maybe my speakers are just malfunctioning, but I feel like in a lot of songs there was like this fuzz. Like I was listening to it off a cassette, or like not like a vinyl fuzz, but like some sort of fuzz in the background, and I think that kind of worked for that, like, I don't know, like warm sadness.
I wouldn't be shocked to learn if this was not recorded in a studio and it was like he took a tape deck to a basement or a home or something like that, and then like recorded onto an analog like recording device, and then from there like mixed it by hand, more or less. Like I would not be shocked if that were the case.
Yeah,
because it does have that warmth of like, if I recorded this at home on my personal little recorder, it would sound like this.
Yeah, and I don't know again if it was me imagining things, but I feel like at some points there was like two separate guitar tracks like playing the same thing, like panned slightly to each side, like just like a tiny bit off. I don't know. I feel like there was like some interesting stuff going on with how the guitar tracks and the vocal tracks were panned, and I can't remember like any specific instances.
He definitely has a very specific guitar style, and I think that's really cool. I really appreciate that on this album, and it's like consistent.
And again, I think he recognizes his strength as a guitar player, and he anchors the song around that for sure to drive the rest of it.
Like about a year ago, I tried to learn "The White Lady Loves You More" on the guitar, and like immediately.
Oh, the strum patterns are
immediately
kind of all over the place on
He's
this record.
So talented at guitar. Like I don't know, it's really intense because it doesn't sound like he's not like shredding it. Like you know what I mean? It's like at some points it kind of like almost like sounds easy, like I could do that, like not a problem. And then like the second you look up like some of the tabs or like notes for the songs, like I don't think so.
It's like really interesting figure plucking. Like that.
I'm surprised actually nobody brought up "The White Lady Loves You More." I think it's like one of the stronger songs like off the album. It was actually the song that got me into the album. Yeah, "The White Lady Loves You More," it's like it's describing what a relationship with an addict is like, and it's like I don't know, it's an upsetting song. All of the songs are kind of upsetting, but I think it's like strong. It's like composed strongly, like it's nice to listen to. I don't know.
It sounds like it's just me that thinks this, but I just want to bring up that I felt like Alphabet Town was just like a really long pre-chorus, and I wanted, like, it felt like it was building up to like something that was going to be really good, and then it just didn't happen.
Kind of like maybe him moving to LA expecting to find success, and then it never happened.
Yeah, like it makes sense with like the content.
I get what you're saying,
but
though.
It just felt like so close to doing that.
I think that's so in spirit with the album, though. Like that's my problem, is like getting so close to happiness, something, whether it's happiness or finding something, and then it's like having it persist and consistently be out of reach. Like I think that's
it matches with the like actual message of the song really well.
Yeah. Anyways, for the sake of time, should we give our final thoughts, Elizabeth?
Final thoughts. Not my favorite Elliot Smith album, but I think overall it's good in the sense that there is no like songs that particularly like I refuse to listen to, and there are some songs that I really strongly love, like The Biggest Lie, Needle in the Hay, and Clementine. I think those are some of his strongest songs. I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Okay, so I know I've been harsh on this album, but like I did enjoy listening to this more than like a lot of our new releases and things from the past weeks. And I do think that there were like lots of good things in the album, but it just like slipped what I wanted it to be by a bit. So I gave it like a 7, bordering on 6.5.
This album is exceptional. That's what I'm going to lead with. It is kind of what it has a lot of the qualities that I value in an album. It has that intangible piece. And I think a lot of that comes down to it is a singer-songwriter who is aware of his strengths, aware of his weaknesses, and kind of compensates for that by leaning so hard into the strengths and making something so personal and vulnerable that it earns a lot of respect from me. And I think, like, I've talked in the past about, like, especially last week with Crawler, like a failure to commit. And this is the opposite, where you have like this such slavish dedication to this very specific set of feelings, a very specific tone, a very specific sound on the record, that you get this thing that like sounds amateurish at times. It sounds like something, if it came out today, it would pop up on SoundCloud probably somewhere, but like there's such an artistry to it and such and it's so admirable how it is produced and put together that it is a fantastic record. It's a 9, closer to a 10. The only thing is, for me, like, a 10 is perfect, and very few albums I've ever rated get a 10. But in this case, like, Satellite is like the one song I can look at as like, okay, it doesn't do enough with the space to add something substantial to the record, but the rest of the songs do. And it's something that like I will happily add this to a list of I want to listen to this album from cover to cover. And it occupies that space in my brain and has me wanting to check out more Elliot Smith or Sam Smith, one of the two.
Yeah, this album was really amazing, and like there was so much to it, and so much that like had me engaged and wanting to hear more. Like, yeah, lyrically there were some pretty awesome lines that I like resonated with. I'm just gonna say this one. I'm a junkyard full of false starts. In counting up roses, or coming up roses. Yeah. That line was just like, I did a facial expression, but I'm realizing now that is not legible.
For audio listeners, Otis is not an AI program. He has a face, and he made an expression.
Yeah. So yeah, there were some really awesome lyrics on here, and like the way that it all like went together, I think was really successful in its like overarching, its overarching themes. And like you said, Elliot Smith committed to this album, and I think that's really big and really important. And like, it was really good. I enjoyed it. I have to give a rating. Sorry.
Yeah, we're waiting, Otis. Come on. Yeah.
That is a really enjoyed it out of 10.
Yeah. Unscorable. Yeah, I don't know.
I would say that this one is around like a 7 or an 8. It's like not exactly what I would always listen to, but I definitely want to listen to more of Elliot Smith, and so I think it's a pretty, like, I'm gonna say it's a solid 8 actually.
I have so many songs to recommend you guys. You're gonna be so miserable. I'm so excited.
All right, speaking of miserable and so excited, it's 5:00 on this Thanksgiving that we're totally recording this on, so we're gonna go into having a rather quick discussion on our last album here. So this is one I recommended. So thank you, Elizabeth, for Elliot Smith. We're now moving on to another 90s heartthrob in Nirvana, fronted by Kurt Cobain, of course. with their 1992 recording live at Reading, the Reading Festival in England. I think so. It was the last leg of their European tour in 1992. And this, in particular, this recording was finally released after being bootlegged for a while in 2009. So well after the band's dissolving in 1994. So, all right. I'm curious to hear what y'all had to think about this. This is a live record. Kind of comes in the middle of the band's career, 92, so 2 years before they would dissolve, following Kurt Cobain's taking of his own life. But yeah, thoughts on Live at Reading?
I've never really listened to Nirvana before. Obviously,
This is a perfect jumping on point.
Obviously, I've heard their more popular songs.
Right.
I'm like not super into grunge. Like I like loud music sometimes. I like grunge sometimes, but I very much prioritize like lyricism. Like that's like something that really draws me to music. So I wasn't a big fan. I honestly did not enjoy this listening experience. I prioritize like lyricism, and when he's screaming all the things, it just wasn't my thing.
I feel like if I were there, I would have had a good time. But it's just hard because it's like it's a 24 songs and it's a long time to listen to me songs that sounded very similar. I think that it sounds good considering it's live. Like it's impressive that all of the songs sound like they do, and that they're all being played live, but it just kind of felt repetitive and like there was just kind of something missing for me.
Yeah, I think I would definitely have enjoyed this being there more than listening to it, but I think that's true of like any live album really. And yeah, I don't know, I think like some of the I was enjoying it for the beginning of it pretty well. Some of the lyrics on this album are like a little questionable at best.
Dare I say gross?
Yeah. Questionable at best and like gross. Yeah, but I think like I don't know, something that stood out to me throughout this whole album was the bass tone. I'm a bass player, and I just like I appreciate that like clean but also grungy bass tone. Like I don't know why I don't listen to grunge or punk or rock very often, but like it's fun. So that
Nirvana as a whole is the best ad I've ever heard in my life for playing bass with a pick. Because that's how Chris Novoselic, the bassist, achieves that tone. Is like, it's like percussive and also this dances. It's like so good.
Yeah, I'm not big into the grunge genre either. So I think that like if I was, I would really like this because like if I can find an artist that has like that I like that has a lot of songs that sound somewhat similar. Like, I would love that. and I think that, like, if I liked this genre and was, like, into this kind of music, then I would like it. I guess that's just me saying, if I were to like this, I would have liked this. But, you know what I mean.
Yo, man, if I, like, went to school, I'd, like, go to school. Yeah.
I, like, have a couple questions. Like,
yeah,
I just don't... Obviously, like, the vocals for a live album was so impressive. Like, sure. But I thought they were impressive, but I'm also an Elliot Smith fan, so. But I just don't know how you can jam out to some of it. Like, I don't, like, how can you listen? Okay, so I knew Kurt Cobain was a very outspoken feminist.
Yes.
And I very much listen to lyrics. I don't really care about the sound of things that much.
Yeah.
So, like, having never been into Nirvana before, I was, like, so shocked to hear Benison and Polly in particular.
Yeah.
I was, like, so confused because I was like, what? And I don't understand how, like, you could just, like, casually put those songs on a playlist or something. I understand that they're meant to be, like, disturbing, uncomfortable. But I just, like, Polly, at least, because it's loosely based off of, like, a crime case. Yeah. But I don't know. And then upon, like, Googling it, obviously I got the context for it, but I had no context. Like, I was going into this Nirvana album so blind, and I was like, why is Kurt singing about how she should have been a son? Why is Kurt saying awful things about women? But with context, obviously it's not from his perspective. I just don't, like, know how you can jam out, enjoy listening to some of those things that he said.
I mean, yeah. So this is the reason I recommend this album. This is an album that's ingrained into my brain. It is just, it's stuck there. For the longest time, just listened to everything Nirvana ever put out. I got in 2005 when With the Lights Out, the box set came out. It was just a collection of every single demo. It was like 70 something tracks or 50 something tracks, and I listened to all of them on repeat. I listened to like those 9 CDs for probably close to 6 months, and that was like exclusively what I listened to. So, you know, a lot of these live performances have been circulating around for a while, but the reason I kind of highlighted this is I think this is a great example of a band at the peak of their career putting artistry into a live set list in a way that very few artists ever have, like ever since or before. As far as like how can I jam out to some of the stuff, Kurt Cobain has self-admitted that he is not a great lyricist and he doesn't care about the lyrics. If you look at any behind the scenes stuff for any of the albums they ever put out, all of it was like he'd spend days writing the tracks, writing melodies, and he was very melody driven in how he would approach tracks. And he wanted it to sound good and sound catchy, and then would improvise words as they just jammed over what he'd written. And then, like, most famously, he'd come into the studio and he'd do all of his vocal takes in a single day, and then they'd spend like 2 weeks doing the instrumental takes. And he'd do the vocal takes after the instrumental takes. So he kind of just improv lyrics, or he'd have an idea in his head. So he read a news story from a local paper and is like, oh, Polly. And that's the improvised track that you get. Stuff like Breed also makes no sense. We can plan a house, we can build a tree.
I like that one. I wrote that down. Admittedly, it's a nonsense line, but what was kind of funny is when, so Bleach was the first record, and there's a lot of tracks from Bleach on here. So like, this is a great mishmash of, it's like if Nirvana played a greatest hits, this is like the greatest hits of Nirvana. And so you have a lot of like early stuff from Bleach, their first record. So you have like School, for example, and School, like the chorus is no recess, just screamed at the top of his lungs for no reason. Negative Creep, also a nonsense song where the lyrics are secondary to how can my voice contribute to the sound of the record or the sound of the performance and the aesthetic of the song. And so obviously I know the context on the songs, but also admittedly most of these have no context, or they are just, and they're not even designed to be shocking. It's just kind of like, I don't know, I just said that. What's kind of funny though is like the lyricism on Nevermind is pretty ambiguous. You know, they drove a lot of that grunge sound and made it palatable. So there's a lot of pop structure to like every one of these songs. These all ostensibly feel like pop songs if you remove the distorted guitar and the screaming. The bass is bouncy on a lot of them. A lot of them are groovable. I want to highlight like Lounge Act as a particular example of this. Like that bass line is so burned into my brain that when I think of bass lines, it is like, it just pops up in a similar way to like Hey Bulldog by the Beatles. But yeah, I mean, like this record is simultaneously, it's a set list that trolls the audience. You think like Nevermind had come out. Every song other than Something in the Way and the hidden track Endless Nameless are played on this set, but they are scattershot throughout the entire record. You start with Breed and Drain You, which were 2 pretty decent singles. You then go into a B-side called Aneurysm that never made it on an album. You go into a song off of Bleach.
You go into another B-side that never made on an album with Sliver. You go into In Bloom and Come As You Are and Lithium, arguably 3 of the biggest singles on Nevermind. 3 of the biggest, and that version of Lithium is incredible. It is so fun and groovy. But then, like, you go into About a Girl, their first single off of Bleach. You go into Tourette's, which had not come out yet. It was on the album In Utero. I'm going track by track. You go into Polly, which is like the slowest, weirdest standout song, besides Something in the Way, on Nevermind. And it's like, you have to pay attention to the lyrics in that song deliberately, because on the album, that's an acoustic track that has occasional drums and Dave Grohl doing harmony. Like, it's very strange. Then you go into Lounge Act. Not one of the most popular songs on Nevermind. Then smack dab in the middle is Smells Like Teen Spirit, their biggest song. And they intentionally whiff it to make it sound awful. It's off by a beat. He detunes the guitar during the solo and just mashes on it, and purposely this takes the guitar so out of tune that nobody could possibly follow along to it, and it's beautiful. He gives up trying to do the vocals in any capacity, just tanks the performance intentionally, fires off into On a Plane, goes back to some Bleach, goes to Been a Sun, again a B-side from like I think it was Incesticide or Harmoning, one of their first demo tapes. Then you get to like All Apologies, which again hadn't dropped. And eventually you're just getting through, and the way they end this record is with Territorial Pissings, like arguably the most forgettable song off of Nevermind that people don't look fondly back on, but it's like the most punk heavy. And then preceding that are 3 covers of songs they didn't write. Your encore after Stay Away is 3 covers, and then like this, probably the closest thing to a B-side on that record. It is such a beautiful thing of like, you're here for Smells Like Teen Spirit, but we're going to give you like, we're going to very deliberately build a set list where you have to stay through the entire thing and suffer through like some weirder track choices that audience had no idea what they were to get to the stuff that you wanted. And I respect it. And I think playing it live, and I'm talking a lot about Nirvana, but playing it live really highlights the strength that each of the 3 members of the band bring to the group. Kurt Cobain, obviously, with his shrieking vocals and just like sloppy amateur hour guitar playing, but ability to write a melody. Chris Novoselic on bass, bouncing around and this flowing so seamlessly between phrases and doing these cool little like things that you don't notice unless you're paying attention to the bass, which you can because the bass mix is astoundingly good. And then you have Dave Grohl on drums and vocal harmonies, and he plays so loudly and aggressively in your face that collectively it makes this band sound so huge for a 3-person group on a massive festival stage. This is a festival sound that they're achieving. And for me, it made it all click as like, oh, duh, I now understand why this band has the reputation they have. For 3 people, if you were there at the time, you would feel like this is a big deal. Like these are songs that are catchy, they connect, they hit, and can they sound samey? Sure. But there's so many nuances to them that I just, and I'm also like a huge diehard Nirvana fan, so this stands out as like equally important to their discography as their 3 studios, for sure.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So were those last 3 tracks before
Territorial Pissings?
Yeah, were those aren't their songs.
Those are covers, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They encored with covers.
I did not know that.
Yeah, the rumor was that Kurt Cobain was sick from a drug overdose and was in a hospital for several days before the performance. And they're like, oh, they're not going to play. And like the press was reporting on, oh, they're going to cancel the show. They're not going to play. There's no way they're going to show up. So he showed up in a wheelchair with a hospital gown on and a crazy hair wig. And then they had to help him out of his chair to play. And then, yeah, he just threw off all that stuff. And he's like, all right, we're here to play and rock this song. They invited a fan on stage to this dance for them for no reason for like 5 tracks. He forgets the lyrics a lot of times. People will make him laugh, and so he'll like, in the middle of Sliver, for example, he starts laughing and then just gives up trying to sing the song correctly because he gets out of the groove. And it's like, there's like these moments of personality that just, they make me so happy. Like, you're listening to this where you just, oh, these are 3 people like putting all of their all into this live performance. And how do you not lose your voice after 24 tracks of this? Like doing, like just redlining and breaking your voice the entire time.
I respect his ability to scream for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I didn't like listening to it, but I respect the hustle.
Yes! The fact that he could get all the way up to Tourette's and not lose it. So he can get 10 songs in and then be like...
Tourette's is literally just scream.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because so he's gone on record saying that I think there's only 3 songs in their discography that have any meaning lyrically, and I think all of them are on their album that would come out after this. And that album that would come out after this basically made fun of people liking their music, because everybody liked Smells Like Teen Spirit, and that's what they were all here for. And you can hear that on this album. Like, the crowd goes insane when they hear that riff. Like, that's the big moment. But what's funny is, like, they would start off their studio album a year and a half later with the line, "Teenage angst has paid off well. Now I'm bored and old." Of this idea of, like, yeah, this worked really well. Now I just play the same music that I kind of hate playing, and I've gotten older. And that song is called "Serve the Servants," where they felt this struggle, especially on tour, to play the songs people wanted to hear and not the songs they wanted to play. So they ended it with covers. And then also the Star Spangled Banner for a second. just for a little bit.
Really weird. I was like, wait, what? What?
He's a big fan of Jimi Hendrix. Like,
At that point, I was like, okay, fair enough. I mean,
and also the fact that they cover "The Money Will Roll Right In," which is a punk song about, like, being famous and going to Hollywood, and it's just like, "I'll sit and grin, the money will roll right in," and that's quite literally what they're doing. I don't know. I'm a Kurt Cobain stan, so.
I liked, and on a plane, one of the lyrics is, "What the hell am I trying to say?" And I wrote, I quoted that lyric, and then I said, "That's exactly what I was wondering about this song."
and like the lyric that precedes that is hilarious, and like the entire, like, and then even that the verse after that is, hang on, I know all these lyrics by heart. So the verse after that is, "Just one more special message to go, then I'm done and I can go home." It's like, that song is just written, it's just like, yeah, I got some stuff to say. Nothing I'm saying is of any value. What am I trying to even say? Bye-bye. It's so good. And like, wasn't me to be, "I'm on a plane." It's not on a plane as in like a plane of existence. It's PLAIN. So intentionally, plane as in the adjective. It's awesome. It's so good. Yeah.
Also, that's the song after that, "Negative Creep." Like, seeing that title, all I could think of was the meme format where it's like, "Evil blank be like," and the first thing that came into my mind was "Evil Radiohead be like."
is Kurt Cobain a creep? A weirdo? What the hell is he doing here?
This was the same year as that first Radiohead album, so it could be anything, really. Yeah, and like, you hear like weird stuff, like if you're familiar with All Apologies, like one of their biggest singles off In Utero, this is an early workshop version of it where it's like totally different from the final release. Dumb is the same way. And yeah, and there's just like a bunch of weird stuff in here that you're like, what other what other band would put together a 24 song set that is most of their current album, a bunch of B-sides, some of their first album, 3 from their album that's a year and a half out, a bunch of covers, and like, you're playing a festival, and that's your set list is like, ugh. And like, also this, again, I love burying all of the singles in the middle of the set when people are like supposed to come down from it. Oh, it's so good. Anyways, yeah, that's Nirvana. Yeah, it's a different way.
Are we doing final thoughts?
Yeah, we'll do final thoughts.
Wrapping it up.
Yeah, please.
I respect the hustle.
Please don't beat around the bush. I don't care. I can take it.
I didn't like it.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
I wasn't into it.
Yeah.
I don't think this was a good intro to Nirvana, and I gave it a 3 out of 10.
Okay. Fair.
I said if this was like an hour shorter, I would have liked it. Like, it's just like after like 15 minutes, it just kind of felt grating to me. And that might be in part because of just it's live, so it's not like the full experience, I guess. And also, like, there was like 4 songs where there's just like feedback in the mic, and I was like, it wasn't like there's like kind of a good like feedback sound, but this was just like a piercing, sharp, like painful feedback for 4 songs in a row.
Yes.
And I was not a big fan of that. So I gave it a 5 out of 10. Like,
yes.
I can get on board for like a song or two of this every now and then, but having 24 songs in a row was just a bit much.
Okay, for sure.
So I liked some of the things about this album, and I think there were some strong points, but like the biggest things that made me like dial my score back were like some of the weirder songs that were like not, some of the songs that had like kind of gross lyrics.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it did, like, I acknowledge that I'm not like I don't listen to this genre a lot, so I know that feeling when you like listening to a new genre and you feel like, oh my god, everything sounds the same, and I know that it probably isn't, but to my ear, which doesn't have like the same amount of experience with this genre, it did seem a little bit repetitive in some way, even though I know that it probably isn't, and if I listen to it more, or if I listen to the genre or Nirvana more, I would be able to hear more of the nuances. And then but I think like the set list, just the way it went, is funny, and like I thought that was pretty like funny, and Smells Like Teen Spirit like started off way too fast. I was like, what is happening? But and the bass tone was like really got me. I was like, this is, I don't know, it was good. So like, I would say like a 5 or a 6.
Yes. Oh my god, yes. So yeah, my list of albums, just so you all know, is stuff that I'm like, I either enjoy or don't enjoy. I'm trying to go for some contentious stuff here, so I appreciate it. This is, Nirvana has 3 studio albums and then 3 live albums that I think are paramount to their discography. Pine Street Theater is from before Nevermind, so it's the Bleach era, so it's the punkiest that you'll hear them be. It's even before I think they have Dave Grohl on drums. You then have this record in kind of the middle of their discography, or their history. And then you have like MTV Live Unplugged, which is a legendary album. If you haven't checked that out, please do. It is them stripping down their songs, intentionally not playing singles, and half of that set are also covers featuring guest guitarists. And they also wanted to make it look like a funeral so that people would be concerned. So again, for me though, this is like everything I love about Nirvana distilled into 3 people whose belief is to play to the song. Lyrics or like tone be damned. We're trying to get a feeling, and it achieves that apathy and that rawness in a way that like very deliberately, if you listen to Nevermind, it's so clean and sterile by comparison that a lot of this is them overdoing the aggression to sell you on like we're a punk band, not a grunge band, because they kind of just got lumped into that title in the 90s. So anyways, for me it's like it's a 9. It would be a 10 were it not for this CD cuts out a lot of the stuff from the DVD, which is like 30 minutes longer. Specifically, it cuts out the part where they start playing More Than a Feeling by Boston, because it has the same guitar riff as Smells Like Teen Spirit. People then start like, oh, and then they stop, and then they actually play Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is funny. And you also get to watch Kurt Cobain thrash around on the floor and just mess around in between songs. So, 9 out of 10 for me. So, all right, let's do this. We need to get out of here. So let's do our assignments for next week. So this week, Veda and Otis will have their choices here, but our new releases we are checking out. We looked at some things, and I think we have them. However Many Days by Atomic Blue is our first one we're going to check out. I have no idea what this record is, but However Many Days by Atomic Blue. The second one, I don't know if we settled on this fully, but I'm going to make an executive decision. The second one is from a band or a group called Westlife. And the record that comes out on Friday, alongside this Atomic Blue album, is titled Wild
Dreams?
Wild Dreams, that is correct. Wild Dreams from Westlife. Not Taylor Swift, as it just tried to pop up. That's a different Wild Dreams. Yeah, so Westlife's Wild Dreams. So Wild Dreams by Westlife and Atomic Blues, However Many Days. And now I want to toss it over to Otis for your recommendation for this week, if you would please.
Okay, so I am super excited about this. I'm just going to say it. I am suggesting Choose Your Weapon by Hiatus Kaiyote. It is their second studio album, and it is the one that I think best showcases them as a group. That might be a controversial opinion, but...
Okay. Cool. And Elizabeth, since Veda is totally not standing next to you for our audio listeners here, could you do your best Veda impression to recommend us an album?
Hey, it's me, Veda Fowler. This is actually Elizabeth Brixton doing a Veda Fowler impression. I know I'm pretty good. I've been practicing. Anyways, my album suggestion is A Safety Meeting by the band Manwolves. Manwolves. Anyways, let me go back to my normal Elizabeth voice real quick.
That was incredibly impressive, Elizabeth. I felt like Veda was in the room.
Thanks, I was practicing.
As you said. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please go enjoy your Thanksgiving here, but that'll do it for today.
The episodes keep getting longer.
Keep getting longer. Eventually, we're just going to do like 24/7 hour, like 24/7 Twitch streams. That's kind of the next. We'll start monetizing.
You should have just told me to shut up.
We're at an hour and 46 minutes right now.
All right, fantastic. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. I hope your Thanksgiving is fun and productive, and we'll see you next week with some hot tracks on Albumology. Class is dismissed. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.